Hi everyone, so for this next problem, we're going to be looking at a poetry question. Now, poetry questions are new to the digital SAT. We had not seen them on the verbal section before, but they're not really all that different than questions we would have seen with the primary source literature passages before, and they're asking us the same questions that we would have seen with any sort of text on the reading section. So let's take a look. So as we can see, if we look at the question here, all it's saying is which choice best states the main purpose of the text. We've answered purpose questions before. We know we're just focusing on the main idea, the main purpose of the passage, as opposed to any supporting details. So yeah, let's take a look here. So we have some context at the top. So the following text is from Maggie Pogue Johnson's 1910 poem, Poet of Our Race. In this poem, the speaker is addressing Dunbar, a Black author. Okay, so we're speaking directly about Dunbar here, and let's see what Johnson has to say. So thou with stroke of mighty pen hast told of joy and mirth, and read the hearts and souls of men as cradled from their birth. The language of the flowers thou hast read them all, and even the little brook responded to thy call. All right, so let's break this down a little bit. So we're talking about the stroke of his mighty pen. He has told of joy and mirth. He has also read the hearts and souls of men as cradled from their birth. Okay, so in this first half, we're talking about, Dunbar's ability as a writer, right? Talking about his stroke of his mighty pen, and he's told of joy and mirth and read the hearts and souls of men. So it seems like Johnson is saying that he's very insightful. He's able to capture these feelings really well. And then we have the language of the flowers, thou hast read them all, and even the little brook responded to thy call. So we were talking about like people before and human emotions, but now we have a little bit different. We're talking about nature. So we have the language of the flowers, thou hast read them all, and even the little brook responded to thy call. So even though we're talking about nature now, it's still very similar in that it's, reflecting on his ability to really capture these feelings, these images, as opposed to people though. Now we're talking about nature, being able to really describe nature really well and really vividly. And even the brook responded to that call. So he's just able to call up all these images really well. Okay, so let's look at our choices then. So looking here, let's go through. So we have A, to praise a certain writer for being especially perceptive regarding people and nature. What do we think about that one? All right, so this one seems like a great option to me. We definitely just said that we're talking about how perceptive Dunbar seems to be based on this poem. So that seems like a great choice, but let's double check with our other options. So B, to establish that a certain writer has read extensively about a variety of topics. What do we think about this one? So this one, it does talk about like this idea of him reading a lot. Like we have read the hearts and souls of men and the language of the flowers, thou hast read them all. When they're talking about reading here, we're talking about like being able to understand and perceive these ideas as opposed to like reading a physical book. So B would not be the best choice here. Then we have C, to call attention to a certain writer's careful and elaborately detailed writing process. So for this one, we are kind of talking about his writing process and like how he's able to accomplish these things through his writing. But it's not really talking about how careful it is or how elaborately detailed it is. So for that reason, C is not the best choice. And then let's see D, to recount fond memories of an afternoon spent in nature with a certain writer. Okay, so maybe that kind of is what's happening here. If they were kind of together at this point and she's kind of reflecting on it. But between A and D, A is definitely closer to what's happening in the poem itself, that we're praising a certain writer for being especially perceptive regarding people and nature. People is the first half, nature is the second half. So that's definitely what the main purpose of this text is going to be here. So not D, but A is the best choice.